Hello, folks, and welcome to the Hybrid Friday lecture. This is going to be really brief and pretty homemade. We're snowed in here in Greenbelt, and my kids are home from school because all the schools are closed, so you may hear them in the background or folks running around to catch them. They may even show up. So we'll try to keep this brief and clear. This lecture is just to pick up on the idea of revision and the revision plan, and these are the things that you were putting together for this Friday's quick note that you'll then meet with me on Skype or Google Hangouts to talk about. And it's a way to think about how you can revision your document. In other words, not make little changes at the line level, but to make a connected set of changes that account for lots of different parts of your document. And this comes from Joe Harris's book, The Chapter on Revision, which contains two exercises that I've kind of put together here. One of them is abstracting your work, and another one is making a reverse outline of what you actually have, and then finally making a revision plan. And that sequence sort of encompasses having kind of an ideal version of what you think an audience should read in your work, what you hope they'll see. Secondly, what you've actually got, that's your reverse outline. And finally, how you get from what you've got to what you hope to have. And so, revision. So I'm going to start with this. I'm actually working on a revision myself today, so I'll show you this. This is an article that I'm writing for a newsletter that it's an academic Mennonite history newsletter, and one of the major project that I was involved in prior to working on sport, which is the subject of this class, was something called the Worship Wars, which is this conflict over whether you should do popular music or classical music and hymnody, those kinds of things, playing the organ and so forth, in Christian churches in the West. And the interest has something to do with sport, even though they are obviously really dissimilar. One thing that's similar about religious worship and sport is that they connect people in space, and they're dependent on very time-sensitive activities like singing together or chanting or doing things that kind of you have to involve yourself in physically, and they connect you across space. And so this article is supposed to summarize a whole lot of research for a public audience, and I have to submit the revisions for this today. So I thought I would show you me using these tools, the abstract, the reverse outline, and the revision plan to revise my own work, so you have a sample of it. So here's the beginning point for this. And what I know about this right now is that one of the constraints is that it's a little too long, and another thing is that at the length that it's supposed to be, which is very short, I have to really pick my battles about what I want people to take away from this. Okay, so what I did was I wrote an abstract of this, and I handwrote it here, and you may not be able to read it, so I'll try and show it to you. But I'm going to do exactly what Joe Harris says we should do with other people's texts. I'm going to talk about my aims. That is what I intend to do with this text. My methods and materials, the things I do them with, and the uses of this, how I hope someone else could make use of my text for thinking or for a problem, for a real-life problem. So that's what I'm going to try to do in the abstract, and I'm envisioning the audience for this periodical, which includes both academics, and they're mostly Mennonite historians and theologians, or other church historians and theologians, as the people that might make use of this. And this also includes sort of a general public that's interested in these kinds of topics, but doesn't speak any scholarly language. They don't know what the heck I mean by things like identity or, I remember from this class, structure and agency. They don't know what those things mean. So here's my abstract. You can see, let's see if I can show this to you in a way that I can also read it. The top here says, do it aims to show that individual memory and relationships formed in making music together are what is at stake in the worship wars. Okay, that's my aims. I hope they'll understand that as my aims. Secondly, methods and materials. He offers very brief stories of individuals in 3 Canadian congregations showing how memory, relationship, and music a musical practice here, I've edited that, form a pattern for each. So that's my methods and materials. They're going to be 3 very short stories that have a lot of work to do. They have to tell you what happens in a big musical conflict through 3 individual short stories. So they have to be packed. In so doing, he offers a new understanding of the worship wars, contrasting with theological accounts, and a possible way for participants in this conflict to understand each other. So here's the uses, and I've tried to define 2 different audiences. The first one is a new understanding of the worship wars, contrasting with theological accounts. That's for the scholars, right? They might care about that. Joe Blow doesn't care about that. But then, a possible way for participants in this conflict to understand each other. That's the other piece. So the folks who read this that aren't scholars, I'm hoping they might get something out of this that will help them understand this piece. So you can see the abstract is a little short paragraph that defines how I think someone else might see what I did. It's what my aims were, how I accomplished those aims, my methods and materials, and what they might get out of it. Okay. Then I went and took my actual draft, and I read it, and I wrote little notes on each side of it. Okay. So here's my draft, and you can see I'm summarizing what I do in each paragraph. So this one says, offers stories from history and River West, which is one of the 3 congregations. This next one says, offers Dawn's theological story. This next one says, offers individual story. And then down here it says, unpacks these stories and contrasts to historical and theological accounts. Or stories, I think I say there. So I just printed out my draft, and in the margins I wrote what I did in each paragraph. And when and then I compared these 2 things. I took a good long look at what I said I wanted somebody else to see in the document and what was actually in it. And one thing I notice is that I spend, relatively speaking, a lot of time talking about the scholars. And in this case, the scholars are the most accessible piece of information. If I only have X amount of words, I could get away with summarizing that. But on the other hand, as long as the idea is there and the contrast can be there, I can assert it and show it very briefly through summarizing what the author does and a citation. Right now, I kind of read those scholarly authors for you. And that means that the accounts of the actual people get compressed. They get shorter than they could be to really show what's happening for these folks. So I think there is kind of the solution to the problem I have with this paper, which is getting across a big idea in a very short space. In this case, looking at my abstract and my outline suggests what I need to do is compress the scholarly accounts so that the idea is clear and the citation is clear and the bigger context of the person's work is clear, but it's really short, just 1 sentence. And that'll give me a chance to tell a little more of the individual people's stories, which are accessible nowhere but in my research. You can't find this text elsewhere. It's my own fieldwork, interviews, those things. So they're inaccessible except through me. And so now I'm going to write what is called a revision plan, and I'll show it to you and see if I can talk you through it. So here's the revision plan, and the revision plan is a set of steps to get from A to B. So it's just a couple of point form notes. So here you can, and I try to make them as specific as I can, and what they amount to is just what I talked you through. So draft and add 2 to 3 sentences on the 3rd congregation, and revise the introduction and conclusion at the start. So this is one story that was missing for here of these individuals, and I'm gonna spend more time talking about it. I'm gonna add that story, and then I'm going to revise the introduction and conclusion, which reflect the big ideas of the piece, to reflect that story. Second, shorten theological and historical stories to 1 to 2 sentences each. And finally, revise the roadmap at the start, and write at the start a summary of the ideas on conflict so that people get what I'm doing with these really, really short narratives. I'm going to prepare them for that at the start. So this is just 3 steps. They're going to take me a little while to do, but together they'll help me get from what I have to what I hope someone else would read in my document. And that's how revision works in this little plan. This is one method of doing revisions: to abstract what you want someone else to have seen in your work, to reverse outline, noting what you actually have in your work, and to make a revision plan that is very specific steps moving you from what you have to what you hope someone will read. And that's what you need to do for the quick note for Friday's class that you and each of your groups will discuss with me. So hope you enjoy the snow day. Hope you have sleds and things like that and go outside. It looks like the best snowman building weather in 100 years here. So have a good time, and ECU Friday.